Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to the members of the media. Good morning to the people watching at home. Good morning to the activists here present with us today. Today we are present outside the Primrose Police Station in the metropolitan of Ekurhuleni in Gauteng's East Rand. We are here today to talk about a matter that affects many South Africans across the country. We are at this particular police station because those of you who have been following our story with dealing with this particular police station and an activist of ours who's been relentlessly harassed by the members of this police station for various different reasons. Reasons that the colleagues behind me and particularly the president will illuminate for you in their remarks later. But nevertheless, the problems that are faced by one Ms. Patricia Khoza, one of our ActionSA activists in this police station, is something that is felt by many South Africans across the country. It is not limited to this police station, and this is an issue faced by people all over the country for various different reasons. So that is why we're here today. We are here today to discuss and lament the issues surrounding crime and the collapse of our criminal justice system, both the South African Police Service and the related agencies, as well as the National Prosecuting Authority. As you will see behind me, Team Fix SA member for Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Julie Seton. Next to her is a retired police officer, Ms. Thuli Khoza. Next to her, we have an admitted attorney and one of our Ekurhuleni councillors, a councillor who's been instrumental in dealing with this police station, Ms. and obviously Herman Mashaba, who needs no introduction. So, colleagues, I'd like to begin the program by first welcoming Thuli, who's going to tell us, as a former police officer, the experiences she experienced as a police captain, and the politicization of the SAPS as she has seen it and experienced it in her own life over the years. I won't come back to the podium. Followed by that would be Advocate Julie Seton. Judged by her title, you will know that she's an advocate and is a legal practitioner and is very au fait with the issues faced by many of the people in the access to justice in this particular country. And then Kutlwano, who's our Ekurhuleni councillor, will be speaking about the issues of crime, particularly related to Ekurhuleni and particularly related to Primrose. Particularly as she's a councillor, she gets many complaints from many residents who are complaining about many various different things, including but not limited to the issues related to crime. And then the final remarks will be made by Herman Mashaba, and those will be focused on ActionSA's blueprint as to how to fix these particular issues. So without further ado, Ms. Khoza.
Good morning, everyone. Okay. No. Good morning, everyone. Law enforcement agencies have long been a political playground for the African National Congress. South African law enforcement agencies is used as a playground for the African National Congress. Since the dawn of democracy, South Africa has had no more than 9 national commissioners for SAPS. It is an astonishing record, however not surprising when we consider that none of them have completed their term of office. As if SAPS had not gone through enough, it had to be given Begicele as minister responsible for its portfolio. This is despite the fact that he was fired in 2012 after a damning public protector report into the awarding of a police accommodation contract worth 1.7 billion to his friend and professional tenderpreneur Shabangu. How can we forget Nathi Mthethwa, the Minister of Police, who together with then Commissioner Riap Pierre gave us the Marikana massacre, when miners were gunned down protesting for their provision of a living wage. an event that could have been avoided with some semblance of stability within SAP's leadership ranks. Nathi Nhleko, the successor, was hardly an improvement himself. The image of him sweating bucket loads during a press conference, attempting to classify the inexcusable Nkandla homestead upgrades as security upgrades is still fresh in our minds. The political instability has not unfortunately spared the SAPs. Internally, important divisions meant to assist SAPs in combating crime. Richard Mdluli, a man who needs no introduction and stands accused of fraud and corruption in relation to the abuse of state security/fund going in the house even today. Unfortunately, the case doesn't stop there. The Hawks' successor to the Scorpions, established with the intention of being the country's apex crime-busting unit, have in recent years been the subject of state capture, political contestation. Under the leadership of one of the most poisonous of characters, Benny Klebenza, we witnessed how the institution was positioned for the political elites in settling political issues. Formerly referred to as the Director for Priority Crime Investigation, this unit under the heights of state capture was used to purge and hound out political opponents deemed to be obstacles to the pillaging of state resources agenda. The fish rose from the head. We cannot allow for the further erosion of the rule of law. We cannot sit idly by, witnessing the abuse of state law enforcement institution established for the sole mandate of protecting citizens and upholding the values enshrined in our constitution. We have to set forth on a path with ethical leadership that must deliver to our society a robust, professional and proactive law enforcement that is patriotic with an unyielding determination to execute their responsibilities without any fear, favor and prejudice. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. As you've heard, the police service is in disarray, and while poor policing is a factor in poor prosecutions, it is not the only reason that our National Prosecuting Authority is in a shambles and justice is not being served. Launched in 1998, the NPA was hailed as a world-class organization, becoming the employer of choice for a new generation of lawyers committed to a post-apartheid transformation agenda. Unfortunately, the NPA was not exempt from state capture and was subjected to political interference and reduction in funding. The rot started with the sidelining of Vusi Pikoli, the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, by Thabo Mbeki to protect the late Jackie Selebi from prosecution. Vusi Pikoli was then suspended by Mbeki and fired by Mbeki's successor, Kgalema Motlanthe, who was protecting Jacob Zuma, whom Mr. Pikoli was attempting to charge with corruption. Between 2009 and 2016, the NPA had 6 different national directors, leading to a breakdown of the institution and an exodus of competent staff. In this regard, let us look at the interference of Jacob Zuma while president. The fact that at that stage the police and the NPA became used in presidential and succession battles and openly became tools used by politicians to run their campaigns, leading to decisions on whether or not to prosecute, with scant regard for evidence or facts or merit, but merely to pander to the political flavor of the day. Let's not forget the spy tapes and the conduct of advocates Jiba and Mrwebi, which led to President Ramaphosa appointing the late Justice Mogoro to conduct a commission of inquiry into the fitness of both to hold office. In this regard, as the late Justice emphasized, the NPA plays a critical role in upholding the rule of law. It is crucial that it is seen to be free from all external pressures which might threaten prosecutorial independence, and stated that our country depends on the premise that NPA officials are required to be completely devoted to the rule of law, without fail. Justice Mogoro deemed both these advocates to be unfit to hold office. However, this report was only released in 2019, and after the release of the report, both were removed from office. This, however, should have happened years before. Examples of the political decisions taken that were highlighted in the report was the refusal of Mrebi to prosecute former crime intelligence boss Richard Thuli. And Jiba was found to be unworthy for, among other things, having been privy to the pardoning by Zuma of her husband, Buka Nansi, who was convicted of stealing money from a trust account. She refused to recuse herself in respect of the spy tapes. And she was furthermore deemed not to have been honest in affidavits she deposed to. Let us also not forget her decision to institute murder charges against the 270 surviving miners of the Marikana shooting while she headed the NPA. The NPA is arguably one of the most unaccountable institutions of state. Decisions not to prosecute and reasons for it are not in the public domain. And the NPA's performance has deteriorated in recent years. Whilst the advent of Shamila Batoy in February 2019 was hailed, and the country hoped that this would be a step in the right direction, it is unfortunate and it is reality that the progress being made by the NPA is extremely underwhelming and incredibly slow. Last year alone, in 2023, the NPA suffered major setbacks. The Nulani case, the NPA's first state capture trial against Gupta family associates spearheaded by Iqbal Sharma, fell apart and was dismissed. The case against Eskom CEO Manshela Koko was struck off the roll. Former Hawks General Jan Mabula was acquitted of all charges of kidnapping and torture. And Zuma's corruption trial has still not commenced after 20 years. While those individuals implicated in corruption on the Zondo Commission report are yet to face criminal charges. So it is indeed safe to say that the NPA currently is an organization in crisis. I thank you.
Dumelang lotlhe le kae? As the ActionSA councillor deployed to Germiston for service delivery, I genuinely get saddened when I get many complaints from residents about the rate of crime in the area. It saddens me even more when residents complain about the treatment that they get in police stations in and around Germiston. Most especially this police station, Primrose Police Station. The complaints vary, from police officers refusing to open cases for residents, despite residents having the right to open cases. This was the case with Ms. Khoza, the case that we are championing currently. In some instances, residents are requested to come with the people or the person that they are complaining about before a case can be opened. Cases are closed immediately after they have been opened, with zero communication from the investigating officer to the complainant. Allegations of officers taking bribes are a dime a dozen. Residents follow up with the investigating officer. To no avail, they get no feedback. The bottom line is that the complaints are many. It makes me wonder if these police officers that residents are complaining about have families of their own. If so, how would they feel if their uncle's home had been illegally hijacked and turned into a drug den, as is the case with every second house here in Primrose? How would they feel if their son or daughter, who has become a drug user, was frequenting these well-known drug dens? I emphasize that these drug dens are well known because residents have informed me that they have periodically seen marked police vehicles stopping outside these drug dens. Unfortunately, it's never to make an arrest. How would they feel if their daughter had been sexually assaulted or raped, and when seeking justice and protection from SAPS, they are told to come back with the rapist? the alleged rapist. I mean, is that even possible? Well, that happened to a lady who lives in Makawusi. How would they feel being the mother of an 18-month-old baby who was raped in Rasta informal settlement last month? Or if they're female, if a loved one or a female relative was one of the women who decided to sleep here in Rasta informal settlement because at nighttime, in Rasta informal settlement, thugs break into people's shacks. They rob the men, they rape the women, with zero fear for any consequences. In fact, eRasta diyaziba ukuthi kukhala isibhamu, khola sithunya koRasta. People know koRasta informal settlement that they have to be back indoors before 6 p.m. because if not, ziyakhala. To me, it's clear that the pride and honor that should come with being a law enforcement official is long gone. While I pay my respects to the few law enforcement officials who take their jobs seriously, and yes, they do exist, though they are few, it has dawned on me that majority of law enforcement officials don't understand the importance of their role in our lives. They don't understand the impact that their jobs have not only on us as individuals, but society as a whole. These men and women in blue are actually superheroes in human form. It's a pity most of them have allowed themselves to be captured by criminal elements. They have sold their capes to the highest briber. They have allowed themselves to be corrupted. And this makes it difficult for the few good law enforcement officials to stand up against these low-down scum which we call criminals. Because these criminals know they will have the backup and support of their corrupted police official colleagues. This scene actually played itself out in Marathon and formal settlement a few weeks ago, where an honorable Metro police officer was shot dead by Zamazamas while he was trying to uphold the rule of law. These Zamazamas are known by the community. They are known by police officials, but there have been no consequences. The consequences of doing what is right seems to be pain and suffering for the family of the slain hero, and may his soul rest in peace. Come 29 May, we have the responsibility to vote for a party that not only wants to fix South Africa and everything that is teka-teka-ring in this country, but a party that actually can fix South Africa. Now is the time for action, because only action can fix South Africa. Ntate Herman Mashaba is a man of action. We saw what he did when he was mayor. He was fixing the city of Johannesburg. Now it's time for President Herman Mashaba to fix South Africa. Let us vote ActionSA. Ke a leboga.
Fellow actioners, members of the media, and most importantly, you, the people of South Africa. We are gathered here today in but one example of the many dysfunctional police stations across the country to present ActionSA's 6-point plan to fix our police stations, end crime, and restore the rule of law in our communities. Police stations such as this one here in Primrose, Ekurhuleni, are at the front line of safety provision in our communities, but so often fail our communities. They often fail to respond to emergency calls from the residents, have broken telephone lines, lack basic infrastructure, or have broken vehicles unable to do any of the patrols. In worst instances, as we have seen with Patrick Khoza's arrest at this police station over the past weekend, they actively fail to protect South African residents and instead intimidate the victims of crime, not the perpetrators. Do not be mistaken. They are proud and ethical police officers within the police service, but they are so often get a bad reputation because of the corrupt actions of the few. For us to fix South Africa, we have to change this. For us to ignite economic growth and create millions of new jobs, we have to end crime and restore the rule of law in our communities. Fellow South Africans, it is clear that the criminal justice system is currently failing law-abiding fellow South Africans. Instances of rape, murder, and assault have become so widespread that they are considered a daily reality of living in South Africa, characterized by complete lawlessness. Today, South Africa has 86 murders which takes place every single day, while every 11 minutes a woman is being raped in our country. It is simply unacceptable that we have allowed this lawlessness to flourish in our country, South Africa. It was a week ago today that our ActionSA Gauteng Premier candidate Funzi Ngubeni and ActionSA Youth Forum leader Thuli Khafani were hijacked in Centurion in Pretoria. A week later, Funzi's baki is still missing and no arrests have been made. It was this past weekend that we saw the tragic and senseless murder of a 5-year-old Ditebogo Jr. Palani in Soshanguve. To date, not a single arrest has been made. Daily, we hear stories of rape and murder. Our newspapers are filled with gruesome details of farm owners being killed, hijackings and theft. But nothing ever comes of these cases. The police fail to investigate and the National Prosecuting Authority fails to prosecute. And so the perpetrators of crime get away with murder. Under the ruling party, it appears that it pays to do crime in South Africa. We need to reform our policing and justice system to ensure that accountability is restored. From the wealthy politicians to everyday South Africans, everyone should fear the rule of law. Fellow South Africans, ActionSA is unapologetic in our stance that harsh consequences must be put in place for violent criminals. We must not tolerate a society where criminals act with impunity while law-abiding citizens live in fear. Our solutions to restore the rule of law seek not only to reform the policing and prosecution itself, but also seeks to address the socio-political drivers of crime, such as hunger and poverty, by growing the economy and creating jobs for our people. ActionSA's 4-point plan to restore the rule of law in South Africa includes: 1. Building a stronger and independent police service. 2. Reintroducing specialized policing units. 3. Reforming correctional services to stamp out corruption and restore order. 5. Professionalizing the NPA and introducing the Scorpions. 6. Securing our borders to stop the inflow of illicit goods. Our plans to combat crime will ensure that respect for the rule of law is entrenched at all levels of our society. We will establish South Africa where people can feel safe in their homes and in their communities. Firstly, ActionSA will build a stronger, independent police service. Our police force plays a vital role in combating crime and protecting those who call South Africa home. The mere presence of police in vulnerable communities acts as a powerful deterrent to crime. For this reason, we will reduce the government's almost 4 billion rand expenditure on VIP protection and reallocate these funds towards crime prevention and visible policing. It is unjust that politicians have access to VIP protection services while us ordinary South Africans live in fear of criminality every day. We acknowledge the important and dangerous work performed by South African police services. However, the police service must be further capacitated to deal with the high levels of crime in our country. ActionSA will focus in its efforts on professionalizing the police service so that our officers are better prepared to prevent and combat crime. We will launch a recruitment drive to expand the police service and establish as a desirable career opportunity. This will ensure that talented, committed people serve as officers of the law. We will help create a pathway to permanent employment for almost 4,000 police reservists in the country who in some cases have waited almost 20 years for permanent employment. Recruitment and vetting practices will be improved to ensure that police officers are appointed based on merit and their competence to serve. Under ActionSA government, police officers will be required to maintain a high level of professional performance. We will enforce strict weapon safety standards for all law enforcement officers to ensure accountability as well as public safety. Every community in our country should have access to police services, and the safety of residents in both urban and rural areas must be considered. As an ActionSA-led government, we'll invest in the construction of more police stations, and we will introduce mobile police infrastructure so that more people have access to police services also in remote areas. Secondly, ActionSA would introduce specialized police units. When I grew up, units like the Bristol Murder and Robbery units were highly effective in combating crime. Everyone feared the unit and knew that when the unit tackled a crime, it would be solved. But under the ruling party, these units were disastrously dissolved, leading to the exponential rise in crime we are experiencing today in our country. That is why an ActionSA government would urgently reintroduce specialized policing units in order for us to turn the tide on crime in our country, South Africa. This is because combating different types of crime requires tactics and expertise, and specific ones for that matter. We will introduce crime units, specialized crime units, specializing in rural safety, anti-gangsterism, organized crime, economic sabotage, as well as drug trafficking. We believe that these investigative units will speed up criminal investigations and prosecutions and ultimately minimize criminal activities within our borders. Thirdly, ActionSA will reform correctional services to end corruption and restore order. South Africa's correctional services have had an important role in holding offenders accountable for their crimes, while also ensuring that offenders can be rehabilitated and reintegrated back into society. To ensure that prison facilities uphold the rule of law, we will enforce strict codes of conduct for correctional services staff to prevent instances of bribery and misconduct. Say, Thabo Beste will never have been able to escape, only to be discovered nearly a year later. In addition, ActionSA will ensure that prisons are sufficiently staffed so that correctional officers are adequately supervised inmates in their custody. Prisoners cannot be havens for violent groups and individuals. ActionSA will implement stricter disciplinary measures and anti-gangsterism programs in prisons to combat violence among the population. We will also reduce violence among prisoners by building more correctional facilities that separate violent and non-violent criminals. Abandoned buildings in rural areas will be converted into prisons. ActionSA will introduce work programs in prisons that focus on public works. This will not only provide inmates with work experience, but society will benefit from their labor. Prison will no longer be a holiday resort, but a place where prisoners repay their debt to society. Fourthly, ActionSA will ensure that life in prison will mean life in prison. Under ActionSA government, protecting the rights, freedoms and safety of law-abiding citizens will always come first. We believe that criminals who receive life sentences should remain in prison for the duration of their sentences. ActionSA will remove the possibility of parole for those found guilty of multiple rape and murder charges, including corruption and drug dealers. While we believe that offenders should be given a chance for rehabilitation, criminals with multiple violent offenses have squandered their chances of becoming law-abiding and productive members of society. Violating our country's laws and endangering the lives of others should have harsh consequences. An ActionSA-led government will increase penalties for violent crimes to deter future acts of violence in our society. We will implement longer prison sentences for crimes of murder, rape, assault, drug dealings, armed robbery, human trafficking, and corruption. These crimes ruin the social fabric of our nation by endangering the lives of our men, women, and children. Finally, we believe that the right to vote was established from a long and hard-won battle for the betterment of our nation. For this reason, we will lobby to withdraw the right to vote from violent criminals serving life sentences. Fifthly, ActionSA will professionalize the National Prosecuting Authority and reintroduce the Scorpions. In 2009, in one of the greatest evils to have ever taken place in this country, the ruling party ANC disbanded the highest effective Scorpion simply because it was investing former President Jacob Zuma. The unit was highly successful with a conviction rate of 90% and seizing assets worth 1 billion rands and seizing 1 billion rands in contraband. ActionSA will reverse this travesty and urgently reintroduce the Scorpions to ensure that it can go back to fighting crime and arresting criminals, including politicians and businessmen involved. We will seek to make the Scorpions a permanent agency with the South African Constitution, as well as trying to introduce a permanent Chapter 9 anti-corruption instruction to investigate and prosecute corruption within the Constitution. And we will capacitate the National Prosecuting Authority and establish specialized courts to deal with specific crime categories such as organized crime and corruption, to increase the efficiency of convictions and so increase accountability. Finally, ActionSA would secure our borders to stop the inflow of illicit goods and undocumented foreign nationals. Increasing control over our borders ensure that all goods and people entering South Africa do so legally, like all the other countries in the world. We will improve the surveillance and management of our country's borders by deploying the Border Management Authority to reduce crime and harmful illegal trade in South Africa. ActionSA will enhance collaboration efforts between SAPS, South African Defence Force, and the BMA to ensure that our borders are monitored effectively. In addition, we will implement technological solutions to better monitor the transactional owning of goods and people between South Africa and its neighboring countries. We want the people of the world to come to South Africa, but they must do so by following our laws. Alongside securing our borders, ActionSA will reform the Department of Home Affairs by addressing structural deficiencies to ensure that improved and efficient enforcement of immigration regulations. Fellow South Africans, it is possible to restore the rule of law in South Africa and live in a country where it is safe to walk our streets by men and women of our country. It is possible for our women to feel safe to use public transport alone, and for criminals to be prosecuted in this country. It is possible to turn the tide on this country, but for that to happen, it will require all of us to take action at the ballot box on the 29th of May this year. It is possible for ActionSA policy to be implemented and live in a safe and secure South Africa. But for that to happen, fellow South Africans, we will need to take action and vote ActionSA at the ballot box this year. Because it is only through action that we can restore the rule of law. It is only through action that we can have safe communities. It is only through action that we can have effective and functional police services. Because only action will fix our country, South Africa. And I really hope and trust that fellow South Africans, the 27.7 million registered South Africans, can come out in their numbers on the 29th to usher in a new future for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren and future generations, so that our children, our grandchildren and future generations do not live in a current brutal, murderous society that you and I currently live in. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us, colleagues, this morning. That concludes the formal proceedings of this morning's briefing. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you've heeded the messages given by the leadership here present today, and enjoy the rest of your day further, and good luck for the rest of the campaign.